Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has secured 45 yes votes on the PRO Act among Senate Democrats. But what about the other 5? Well, we're hearing more about senators like Mark Kelly, a Democrat, who has resisted co-sponsoring this major piece of labor law reform known as the PRO Act, citing a policy of not endorsing measures that don't also have Republican support. Now, he's full of crap, and I'll tell you how in just a second. But it is hope that if he comes on board, he could bring his Arizona colleague, Senator Kyrsten Sinema, with him, leaving backers just 3 co-sponsors short of the 50 that would bring the bill to the floor. Now, before I continue, let me also just note that even if 50 Democrats say that they will vote yes on the PRO Act, it still would not pass in the Senate. The legislation has already passed in the House, but it still would not pass under Senate rules. And that's because there's still a legislative filibuster indicating that you would need 60 senators to vote in favor of this type of legislation. Manchin has said that he went from considering reforming the filibuster to now saying that he will not do it under any circumstances. So there are all sorts of problems, not just because there are Republicans in the Senate that you would have to appeal to, but because you literally have corporate Democrats or conservative Democrats who are standing in the way of filibuster reform and even standing in the way of this bill, which would embolden and empower labor. So obviously Kelly is full of it, and I'll tell you why. He has co-sponsored all sorts of legislation and supported and endorsed all sorts of legislation that has no Republican backing whatsoever. Kelly is a co-sponsor of Senate Bill 833, which empowers Medicare to negotiate drug prices, a bill hotly contested by Republicans and the drug maker lobby. Another bill, the continued funding for senior services during COVID-19 Act, has no Republican support, which does really help emphasize how much the Republican Party has no problem just being goons who don't actually look out for people they represent. But Kelly here is saying, no, I really want to do things that are bipartisan, but he's full of it. He doesn't actually care about that. He just wants an excuse to not support the PRO Act. So Woz, before I get to more details on this, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it feels like a lot of their strategy, and I use the term strategy quite loosely whenever talking about the Democratic Party establishment, but it feels like their strategy is with every piece of thing that they want to pass is to slow roll it and do the charade and pretend that there's any way possible to get Republicans on board with anything that isn't shoveling money all the way back up to the rich people. It just feels like they're doing a song and dance and parade. They just say the same talking points. Well, I don't want to do something that doesn't have bipartisan support. Why?
Yeah.
Why don't we ask this guy why he's so committed to bipartisan support? And I say this all the time, people need to stop saying that we need to do stuff that's bipartisan for the sake of bipartisan. I want to hear a full-throated endorsement of why bipartisan legislation should take precedence over anything, even stuff, like the COVID relief bill that had 75% support amongst the American people. The idea that bipartisanship would trump that. And the PRO Act, which again, as a Democrat, which is allegedly the party that represents normal working people, allegedly the left party in this country, the idea that they would wait for Republicans to pass something like the PRO Act, pro-labor, make it easier for unions not to get union busted and just destroyed by the corporate interests. The idea that you would need to defend this against bipartisanship is just ridiculous to me. These people need to say part of what he said is he doesn't want to be the only senator from Arizona doing this. Why? What do you not believe in the legislation? They don't even talk about the merits of the legislation. They don't talk about the merits of the arguments that might be coming from the people who would ostensibly be opposing this. They just come out and say words. They just spew words. It's ridiculous.
You're 100% right. They do. They just spew words, even because it doesn't even matter. Woz, it doesn't even matter. They get caught up in the lies. Mark Kelly lies about how he wants to do things that are bipartisan. I just listed legislation that he's endorsed that is not bipartisan or doesn't have bipartisan support, but he doesn't care. Just like how Senator Kirsten Sinema doesn't care. Sinema has no problem walking up in front of everyone and doing that down vote on increasing the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. She's proud of that vote. And the reason why she's proud of it is because what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? This is the thing that drives me crazy about people who are like, no, we're gonna find out who's against the stuff that we want, and then we're gonna hold them accountable. How? What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do, seriously? You have organized labor, well then you have workers in Arizona who can do general strikes and essentially pull capital down to its knees, right? But we don't have that. Like union jobs account for a tiny percentage of jobs in Arizona. Kirsten Sinema's not scared, guys. Neither is Senator Kelly, neither are any of these lawmakers. And so like that's the issue here. And then there's a bit of a chicken or egg issue, right? Because you need the PRO Act to pass in order to protect labor, right? In order to make it easier for workers to form unions. Some of the union busting tactics that Amazon used in response to the unionization effort in Bessemer, Alabama, was legal in the state of Alabama. That's the problem. 1945, the Taft-Hartley Act, which essentially said that employees cannot be forced to pay union dues. And so what did that do? That disempowered unions because they lose resources in the form of union dues and they become less powerful. Like the PRO Act is supposed to undo that damage and make it easier for workers to be able to form a union should they want to form a union. So we're kind of stuck in this terrible situation right now where in order to embolden labor, you need Congress, this broken, terrible system that's corrupted and self-interested to do the right thing. And that's incredibly difficult to do. So that's the situation we're in. I wanna be real about it. And anyone who tells you like, but if we just elect this person, or if we just elect that person, no one person getting elected into Congress is gonna change your life. It's just not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. Now, does that mean that electoral politics isn't important? No, that's not what I'm saying. That is part of the strategy. But to think that all you need to do is vote every 2 years or every 4 years and that's it, and everything is gonna go well, it's just not. It's not that easy.
And again, and I would just like for one time for one of these Mark Kelly or Joe Manchin types to have to actually be held accountable for their stances. Actually go on the record and explain to me why the PRO Act is bad for workers, why doing exactly what the Capitol wants is great for normal everyday working people. Just explain it to us. Tell us why this is better for us than what the PRO Act would do. Explain it. I just wanna hear you say those words instead of just throwing out platitudes. Actually have to defend your stupid ass stance instead of saying like, look, this is why I would potentially vote against this thing or why I'm not co-sponsoring it, because look, it has this part of it, has this provision, that's gonna trigger that has all these unforeseen consequences, X, Y, and Z, like anybody else has to do when they take a stupid stance in public. They actually have to go out and defend it. These people don't have to do anything. They just spew their lies and ridiculousness and move on with their lives.
I mean, they would need journalists to ask them follow-up questions, and you just don't get that. But I do want to name some names. Obviously, Kelly and Sinema aren't the only senators who have not committed to voting in favor of the PRO Act. You also have Joe Manchin of West Virginia, Mark Warner of Virginia, and Angus King of Maine. And King is thought to be some sort of like independent who might be gettable. And to be quite honest with you, I'm not really buying that yet. He's been getting calls from the AFL-CIO. DSA is doing quite a bit of organizing in order to apply pressure to these lawmakers to try to get them to sign on to the bill. But again, I mean, we just have this massive mountain to climb on this issue and others, because it's not just about getting 50 Democratic senators to sign on to it. It's also about reforming, in the very least, that legislative filibuster that continues to stand in the way.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. I really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.